This week, we're going to be taking a look at some beautiful high-key imagery, reevaluating why we ever spent money on strobes, and starting a subscription with Adobe stock. Joining us on our journey to offer a little bit of advice and some advice we can't refuse, the Godfather himself, Dale Martin. This is Why Do I Love This? Welcome, everybody. I'm James Sanney. With me tonight, co-hosting, is 100% Jake. And, of course, our guest of honor tonight, the Godfather himself, is Dale Martin. I figured I'd do just a little bit of research on Dale before we started this. I know, Dale, you and I have been friends on Facebook for a while now, but we've never actually met.
Right.
You have, from the articles that I looked up, it looks like you've been shooting cars now for, is it over 7 years now?
About 7 years, yep.
Okay. Well, you want to give us a little bit of history on where you started and how you got to where you are today?
I started out with buying a Mustang and a camera at the same time, and started taking pictures of the Mustang and started hanging around the rest of the Mustang guys and taking pictures of their cars. And I always had a dream to be an automotive photographer. I was an IT director at a law firm in Dallas, and I'd sit in my cubicle or my office and stare at the walls and say, boy, I wish I was doing something different. And I took the leap 7 years ago and jumped into it full force, and it's been a roller coaster ride ever since.
That's awesome. So with what you've been doing, I noticed you got a lot of off-road trucks and like lifted, leveled builds. In fact, I think that's one of the magazines that you shoot for. Is Lifted and Leveled. Is that what that is?
Right, that's it. I work at a shop here in McKinney, Texas. That used to do a lot of lifted builds, and now we do a little bit of everything. We have a big contract with Toyota, so we do all Toyota special builds. We transport a lot of Toyota's vehicles to photo shoots and to video for commercial shoots. So I've gotten a chance to work with Toyota a little bit since I've been back here. I moved to Durango, Colorado for 2 years to shoot Jeeps in the mountains, and got the itch to come back to Dallas.
I think that's actually about the time I found you, was when you were out in Colorado, and I saw some of your Jeep photos. You've got some absolutely incredible imagery that you've taken with some of those off-road builds. Yep. How'd you like working out there?
I loved it. There's never a lack of locations. Never worried about being run out of a location, except one time we did do a commercial shoot and we got busted by a park ranger for jumping a fence, and he was a nice guy. He told us to pack up our stuff and get out. We tried to tell him we were doing an editorial shoot for a newspaper, and he was like, "Nah, there's too much commercial equipment out here. I know the difference, and y'all need to pack it up and leave." But other than that, it was a breeze. You could pull off the side of the road somewhere and have beautiful views, and it wasn't hard to shoot vehicles out there. A lot of where I was at in Durango, Porsche shoots up there, Mercedes shoots up there. Ford did all their Raptor high altitude shooting testing up there, so it's a pretty cool place for automotive.
Yeah, it's hard to beat the views out there. With Kansas, I mean, we get out into eastern Colorado and it just feels like western Kansas until you kind of get to the Springs area and you start to see some mountains. But man, once you get to those mountains, it's just incredible no matter which way you look.
Yeah, it was down in Durango, it's southwest Colorado. There's mountains everywhere. It's like I say, there's locations. You just drive around the corner and there's a location for you in your own backyard.
That's awesome. All right. Well, I think we'll just go ahead and get started on this. We'll move on to our first image to discuss.
All right.
Pull this up over here. So this image of the black Ferrari here, this kind of high key image that you've put together. This is one of my absolute favorites that you have done. It's not my number one favorite. That's the next image. But this is just, knowing the difficulty behind photographing black cars, I think that this image is just incredible.
It's just, it's a funny story behind that. Tristan Buster and I, he works at Starwood here in Dallas. I have a client that Sabini Wheels that wanted me to shoot that car, and I met with Tristan, and Tristan and I shoot together a lot sometimes, and we took it out to some park, and it blended in with the trees, and it didn't really pop out. And Tristan's like, I got a spot over here where they closed down an old Walmart. It's a back wall back there, and I said, well, as long as it's gray or white, we can make it work. And we went over there, and it was, that's full, that's noon sun right there, and it's just a big white wall. And black cars are not bad to shoot. They're not hard to shoot if you know and you know how to angle them, and you know how to polarize them, and you know how to edit them afterwards.
Sure. Yeah, and I thought I had seen something online after you put this image out, making a comment about a Walmart, and I wasn't sure if that was serious or not. So it's cool to learn that.
That's the customer pickup area behind an old Walmart here in town.
That's awesome. It just goes to show that if you know what you're doing, you can make anything work, right?
You try. I mean, you've got to learn to adapt real quick in this business. You don't get a lot of time with some of these cars, and you got to knock it out and move on.
Sure. Well, one of the first things I want to talk about with this was lighting. You had mentioned already it was kind of midday, I don't know, high noon light. Did that, in this particular situation, did that kind of work to your advantage?
It does with black cars, as long as you get the shadow, as long as you get the light behind the car a little bit, and you've got a little bit of shadow to work with, you can bring out some of that shadow side in post.
Okay. Yeah, and one of the things that I've struggled with myself on some of the black cars I've shot, because a lot of times I try to shoot around golden hour if I can, is that if the sun is, if I put the sun behind the car, kind of off to the side, if it's lighting up anything behind me, it's just a mirror down the side of the car. Even with a polarizer, depending on your angle, it's really hard to cut those reflections. Right. And so I didn't know if it was easier when the sun is straight above, because it's not necessarily, depending on where you're shooting, how you're shooting, maybe it's not illuminating anything around you. Was there anything behind you when you shot this one?
The parking lot. And
just the parking
lot. Apartment complexes and stuff like that.
And so you used a polarizer?
It gave enough room where there were too many reflections on it, and I polarized it. And that's a blended composite between the unpolarized and polarized to keep the lines in the car so it didn't turn completely black.
Okay. Yeah, that does seem to be, I've noticed that a lot of people suggest, do a double polarization, and then you just layer on layer, darken, and then you've got a silhouette. So
right. And I used to be the guy that would polarize everything and take all the reflections out. And I started, shooting with some manufacturers, and they're like, "Where are your reflections? You need reflections. Show the line, show the paint, and you don't want everything looking flat."
Sure. All right, so we'll move on to the location. You already disclosed that this was just kind of shot at an old abandoned Walmart. Yeah. When you're working with a black car, I mean, in this situation, you kind of explained you guys started with trees, you ended up here in this kind of high key environment.
Right.
Would you recommend an environment like this when you're shooting with a dark car because of that high key look, or does it depend on the situation, what the client wants?
This client's pretty much, do your thing, and we know that you'll turn over a decent product. To make that car pop, it really needs to be by itself with a blank canvas behind it, I think.
Okay.
I mean, if it was a big truck or something like that, it'd be a little bit different. You can put it in the field or put it on a dirt road, and make it work. It's kind of hard to do that with a Ferrari.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, without a racetrack, I don't know.
I've shot some cars at racetracks, and they're pretty nice because you have that nice horizon line down the side. Usually there's not a lot of stuff. At least racetracks here in Texas, we've got a couple that are out in the country, and you'll get those nice, even, long horizon lines down the side of it, so it's not a bad deal there. But around town, it's hard to get anything. Everything's so bunched up together, you just get tons of reflections.
Sure. Well, we'll move on to composition here.
Okay.
Rule of thirds and all that. Car's kind of center weighted here, and I'm just curious about, was there a reasoning for the layout to kind of just plop the car in the center?
I do a lot of center weighted things because it's a lot of their stuff is used for catalogs, and it's a standard portrait. What do you call it? Portrait layout, and I shoot a lot of editorial stuff, so I usually leave enough room for the client to crop the way they want to.
Okay. You shoot with a pretty big megapixel camera, don't you? Aren't you shooting on an A7R series?
A7R3, yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely nice. That does give you a little bit of wiggle room in post to, if you frame it well.
But that dynamic range is wonderful, but you can go too crazy with it and you start getting a lot of noise and stuff like that. So you got to be careful.
Yeah, I've kind of noticed that too. I picked up an A7R3 last January. I switched from Canon, and I sometimes still have a tendency to push things a little too far, thinking it's fine, and then you zoom in there to work on other things, and you go, "Ooh, that's not."
Yeah.
That's not okay.
Yeah, and you start losing it in the shadows.
So with this exposure, this looks like you're stopped down quite a bit to keep everything in focus. Was there a reason why you went with such a narrow depth of field on this?
I basically shoot all the cars between F8 and F11.
Oh wow!
Especially for a wheel company, because if you shoot a shallow depth of field, you're gonna get your depth of field is gonna kill your back tire or your back wheel.
Okay, and I've read that. I think actually one of the ways I ran across you was through Pepper Yandel's classes. And I know he shoots very similarly, and he's also talked about that, nose to rear bumper, you want that whole car sharp when you're shooting. And I know that's a big trend that is not overly popular on social media. A lot of these guys just like to shoot wide open and just pray for the best.
They want that artsy look, but I've heard clients complain about that too. I mean, I've got a client that a fairly well-known photographer decided to get artsy with some images one time, and he shot them all at f2.8, and he's like, "What is this? Like, the back wheel's out of focus. I can't use this." So I mean, it's and I shoot for a lot of wheel companies, so they want their stuff tack sharp from front to back.
Okay. Well, and I mean, when you put in the work to track down a location too, and I know this one might be a little bit different because it was kind of a last-minute deal, but some of your other imagery with these beautiful landscapes, if you're going to put in the work to find something like that, you kind of want to show that off too. It's part of the story, right?
Right.
So my last area here on this one was your color work with this. Is this kind of just the way color-wise that it came out of the camera, or did you do some work with your color and post-processing?
There's no real color grading in it at all. Pretty much a lot of the colors have been ripped out of it. The blues have been ripped out. Some of the reds have been ripped out. That pavement had a reddish tint to it. I pulled it out to make it white or make it lighter.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely it almost at a glance, without your logo, it almost look kind of monochromatic, but there's still just a little bit, with your markers and your calipers and even the wheels themselves have a little bit of a tint to them. But yeah, I was just curious. I know a lot of people just desaturate all the blues when they're shooting a black car, and depending on your location, if you have a blue sky over that car, it looks kind of funky then that there's no blue in the car.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to rip the blue out of the car, you better rip it out of the sky too.
It does kind of look a little weird when you just do it in one area there.
Right. When I first started shooting, and when I do black cars, I would almost wait for an overcast day to do a black car.
And was that just because of the color on the car, or was it because of the
color
soft light?
and the color and the soft light?
Jake, did you have any questions or anything you want to talk about with this photo? I know this wasn't one of your picks, but I feel like I'm steamrolling you here.
No questions per se, but this does definitely have me wanting to seek out this sort of a setting for some shots. I've never tried anything like that before, and I very rarely shoot at a that high. That high of an f-stop. I rarely venture above 5.6, so 7 to 11 is pretty. That's territory that I don't venture into very far. So I'm definitely wanting to try some new things after looking at this, because having the whole car tack sharp is cool, and having the background in focus is really neat. There's a lot of people are just using their cameras trying to distance themselves from cell phones, because you take a shot with a cell phone and everything's as sharp as a cell phone can get it. And so a lot of people associate the shallow depth of the field as being the expensive camera look. but also there. But yeah,
I mean,
Sure.
for lifestyle and portrait, I'll use shallow all day long. But
Yeah.
you know, just for basic car ad or catalog work, I'll keep it sharp as possible.
And I am a big fan of the sort of corporate commercial style of photography. I just have never really been able to try. I've never ventured into that territory as far as composition and setting up shots, and it's definitely something I'd like to do more of. And I'm a pretty big fan of this. Very dramatic sort of monochrome look.
Yeah, it's a beautiful image. I mean, the highlights that accent the shape of the car is really, to me, that's one of the things that stuck out. It's so hard to find really nice shots of black cars other than what you would see in like a manufacturer's brochure. And so to see something like this, I think that's what caught my eye when I saw you put this online a while back, was it just, you didn't just kill all those reflections. You can really still see the shape of the car by utilizing those highlights.
Right.
And I never did think of what Dale said just a little while ago about you don't want to kill all the blue in just one area of the image. It's like, if you've got sky in the background, you need sky off your car, but I don't really want blue sky reflecting off a black car. I never thought of just, shooting it somewhere where there is no sky in the image and then pulling the blues out of the whole thing. That works a lot better.
That's a good trick.
All right, well, let's go ahead and we will move on to our next image here.
All right.
This one right here, the Skyjacker Bronco, this is without a doubt my favorite image that I have seen from you. And, I've already kind of talked to you about your favorite image, but I don't know what it is. It's just, I think it's a combination of the location, the lighting on the truck. It's just, there's so much story here. It just feels incredible to me to see this image. It feels like an adventure just waiting to happen looking at this photograph.
Right. And I shot that for Skyjacker, for Lifted and Leveled magazine, and for some of their marketing material. The marketing director took me out the night before, and it was like pouring rain, and she showed me the location. She goes, hopefully we can shoot here tomorrow, but if it keeps raining, it's going to turn into a swamp again. And it was a night of tossing and turning, hoping that I was going to be able to use this spot. And I had originally planned on lighting this, and my crazy trigger decided to go crazy and not sync up and not want to work with the strobe. So instead of throwing my hands up in the air, I winged it and made it look like it was strobed.
And so, yeah, I mean, that blew my mind when you told me a couple days ago when we were talking that this is just natural light. I'm assuming that this is a situation where you probably bracketed multiple exposures, or was this just a single exposure?
No, that's bracketed.
Okay.
I pulled the car in that light line so I could light the side of the car up, and then I kept the foreground dark to give that kind of mysterious look of, not knowing what's in front of it. And I tried to keep the trees dark, the trees that go farther back darker into the shadows, and just kind of build that area of light up to feature the car.
Sure. And I think that's one of the things too that I really like about this, and one of the things that does kind of mess with your mind is that because of all that darkness around it, it looks like the car has been artificially lit.
Right.
So that's so cool that you were able to achieve that, and that, a lot of people wouldn't even necessarily know. This was just, your talent mixed with natural light and positioning to get this effect is just super cool.
Right.
So, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to go on to location here. You said the client had picked this location out.
Uh-huh.
And so this is a swamp?
Yes. It's in Monroe, Louisiana.
And I didn't bring other images from the shoot. I know you shared some of those with me. Just every image from the shoot is just fantastic. But yeah, I really did like that mystery that you kind of talked about with the darkness kind of surrounding the car. It really compositionally just draws your eye right down into the vehicle in the middle.
Right.
So is this the only type of vehicle, the only time you've really used a location like this was with this particular vehicle?
I mean, I've used locations like that before in Colorado, but since we were shooting it in Louisiana,
the magazine and both the marketing director were like, let's make this look like Louisiana. Let's not shoot it in front of an old building. Let's not shoot it. Let's make it look like Louisiana. And what better in Louisiana is a swamp or a bayou?
Absolutely.
And a couple weeks before that, this place was underwater.
That's just crazy. And so when you guys actually drove this in there, did you have to, they have to do any cleanup on it before you could take pictures?
No. No,
Wow.
They kept it in the soft grass and wheeled it in very slowly.
That's awesome. So let's see here. We've already kind of talked about some of the other factors like composition, why you do center weighted images, and you explained depth of field wise, you're pretty much sticking with a pretty narrow aperture to get everything in focus. We'll just skip on to color with this. I imagine there was at least a little bit of color grading that went into this because it's got kind of a greenish tint to it that I wouldn't think is totally natural.
No, it's got a little bit of color grading going on there. There's some color grading with the color of the car and color grading with the greens to kind of give it that foresty look or that swamp look.
So is that how you decided on the colors? Was just because of that swamp forest area? That's why you kind of went with kind of green in your shadows and.
Yep.
Jake, did you have anything you want to talk about with this one?
Not a ton. The green and the orange are very complementary. There's a minimal blues here. It's
actually an overcast day. Actually, there's a little bit of light coming through, but there was a lot of overcast coming through. And that was another problem with this thing is the sun kept going behind the clouds, in and out, in and out. So sketch it where you can.
Roughly how many exposures went into this shot?
About 3.
3? Oh, wow. No, that's
there's an exposure for the side of the car, exposure for the windshield, and then exposure for lighting.
So so that's all just sunlight, no bouncing or
breaking up.
Yeah. Sorry. Was there any diffusing light or bouncing it?
No diffusing. That's straight sunlight.
Wow.
Gosh, that's crazy. That's such a beautiful image. All right, well, let's head into one of Jake's favorite images here. And Jake, I will kind of let you take the wheel on this, and you can go through and discuss what you'd like to.
So I chose these images about a month ago, and my reasoning as to what exactly stood out to me then is lost on me now. I liked the dramatic lighting on this one. I wasn't sure if there was any special light painting or anything to accentuate those rock lights. The steam is really cool. I wasn't sure if that was a practical effect or Photoshop because it looks real convincing. And then again, I was just kind of struck by the very small aperture in this photo. Again, something that I never do, and James didn't do for the longest time. So seeing something where there's distant trees in the background and they're all perfectly tack sharp was fairly unusual to me.
Well, again, it's center weighted because it was shot for a magazine, but it's also shot for a bumper company and wheel company. It's Fab Fours. And that was their brand new wheels that they just put on there. They were, featuring that vehicle for a cover on a magazine, and they were showing off some of their new wheels.
Did you have any difficulties with this specific location?
I'm sorry, you broke up there.
I'm having problems with that. Were there any difficulties inherent with this location?
You there?
He was asking if you had any difficulties with this particular location. Dale, can you hear us? Dale, are you there?
You there?
Can you hear me, Dale?
Hold on. Let me move around a little bit. I'm losing you. How about that? Is that better?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, Jake was asking if there were any difficulties utilizing this particular location. Oh, and he's gone. All right. Well, we will just continue to talk about this image ourselves, and we'll try and get him back in here while we do that. I agree. I think this location is fantastic that he picked here. And
Very sharp relief for all the rocks. Yeah.
Well, I really.
About that.
Oh, that's okay. Welcome back, Dale.
Okay.
All right. So, what he was asking before we lost you, he was asking if you had any difficulty with this location, getting the vehicle in there, or anything like that.
No, that was in Moab. They were out there in an area called Area BFE. It's private land out there, and it's some really pretty rough terrain. And these guys they're like I say, they own that bumper company, and the owner of it's a huge crawler, and he was able to get it down in that nasty little pit.
And the fog that we see in that shot, is that a practical effect or
That's post.
Post?
That's all post. It was dusty out there, and I was trying to pick up the dust, but it wasn't coming through too good, so I added it in post.
It seems like a very difficult effect to pull off convincingly in post, judging by how many times I see it done poorly.
Again. You there?
Yeah. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Uh-oh. Dale?
Yeah, hold on. There we go. How about that?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Keeps going in and out.
Yeah, we're hearing you come through just fine.
I want to run down the other end of the building where there's better Wi-Fi.
So, Jake, while he's doing that, let's move on to maybe you want to talk about color with this one. That's one of the things that stuck out to me was the really nice soft coloring of the overall location.
You guys still there?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Dale, can you hear us? One, two, three. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. All right. So we figured we'd talk about the coloring with this particular image.
So the sky was added after the fact. It was sunset, but it didn't have that. Didn't have the pinks in it like that. The final image does.
I am a fan of how the image itself overall kind of has gradient. There's some pretty prominent blues on the rocks in the foreground, fading out as you go up the image to the pinks in the sky. It's
Right.
kind of very nice separation on the background, color-wise. Or were the blues added on those rocks, or is that just the natural color of the rocks, or a reflection of the sky?
They were added.
Oh, okay. That's
Giving it some shadow effect, or looking like it's in the shadows where the cooler light's going to be in the shadows, and the warmer tones will be up near the sky.
okay. Yeah, I never would have thought of doing that sort of.
Yeah, one of the things I really like about that is it almost feels otherworldly because of that, with the bluish on the rocks there towards the bottom, and then that kind of steam smoke behind the vehicle, and then the pink skies. I mean, it feels like you're on a different planet, and I think that's really cool. And that blends well then with the red lighting underneath the Jeep.
Right.
Did you have any difficulties with that red lighting? Because I've always had. It seems like cameras are almost too responsive to pure reds like that, and they just tend to blow out everything in the vicinity.
I mean, it's a long exposure to pull the lights out, but I did, drag the red slider up a little bit.
Oh, okay. Oh, I guess that does make sense that they wouldn't normally be quite that visible in the daytime. I didn't even think of that.
Right. So I did a long exposure to pull them in, and then, like I said, I went and created a color mask or a saturation mask, and saturated the reds a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, Jake, did you have anything else you want to talk about on this one?
No, not really. It's a really cool shot. Very otherworldly, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, let's move on to your next image.
Okay.
Which is the Sierra. So why don't you give us a little bit of background on this photo, Dale?
I shot that Sierra for specially forged wheels over in Decatur, Texas, in front of an old building, and I actually lit that, and it just didn't have that. It looked good against the old building, but I wanted something extra, and I'd seen somebody in a group use this background, and I was nice enough to reach out and say, "Hey, where'd you find that background?" And he's like, "You wouldn't believe it if I told you. It's on Adobe stock." I said, "Well," so I started searching for steel mills in Adobe stock, and I don't know if you guys play around with that a lot, but there's millions of images in there, and I couldn't find this image, so I said, "You got the image number by any chance?" And he gave it to me, and I said, when I shot this truck, I had seen his image before that, and I'm like, I gotta put a truck in this image, and I shot this truck, and I said, this thing would be a prime candidate with the colors and everything to be put in this steel mill image. Took a lot of heat on this from a lot of guys saying, "How'd you get that truck into a steel mill?" They won't ever let you bring a truck in there.
Oh, that's really cool too. I think the color of the truck lends itself well to that location because of
Right.
the warm coloring. Did you
Right.
have to do a lot of additional manipulation on top of the lighting that you did on the vehicle to blend it into that environment?
No, that's like that ruby red that Ford has. You hit it with light, and it turns that bright orangish red. If you shoot it in the shadows, it's almost burgundy.
So this was strobed?
Yeah, that's strobed.
Oh, okay. Did you have to do a whole lot of fighting to get the perspectives to match up? Because obviously, when I looked at this at first, I had no idea it was a composite.
A little bit of manipulation, not too much.
I've tried compositing once or twice, and it's just completely beyond me. I can never get the perspectives to match up. Even when I go into it from the beginning, going, yes, I'm going to try and make this a composite and
Right.
try and do everything just right.
Right.
And
And you
so,
try to look at your background before you. I tend to look at my background before I do the shoot of the vehicle. One for lighting, and two for perspective. Try to get it to line up on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I'm curious about here was with the wheel being just chrome.
Right.
What kind of location? Because I'm guessing that the reflections in that front wheel are probably from the original shot, or did you manipulate those too?
I believe those reflections are actually reflections of the inside of the wheel itself on the barrel.
Okay. Yeah, I can see kind of the spindles there, but there's like a darker area, and I wasn't sure if that was adjusted by you in post, or if that just kind of lucked out with working with the...
No, that's pretty much, it was taken from I didn't adjust anything in the wheel barrels at all.
Gosh, that's crazy. So do you remember about how many exposures it took to light this vehicle?
There's two down the side and one across the back.
That's it. Wow. I totally would have expected this to just eat that light right up.
Yeah.
No,
That's
there's
fantastic.
one in the very front. It would be far camera right, pointed at the front of the truck, probably to the rear door, and then midway through the truck down the side, strap it down that back quarter panel. Then spin your polarizer and hit the back tailgate.
So that's interesting. That's something that I've strobed a few cars, but not nowhere near to this effect. And it's interesting to hear you say that, because I've always kind of wondered, like, I've never thought about rotating the polarizer when I change the side of the car, like from the side to the front.
Yeah, you treat it just like you would if you were in the sun. You're getting rid of the reflections on the side of the car on that one spin, and the reflections on the back of the car or the back window with the other spin.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. I guess I never thought about doing that. I'm so worried about jostling the camera too much that when I'm strobing, I just kind of set to block whatever reflections I see in the location and just run from there.
It helps to have a good, smooth CPL filter.
Right. Let's see here. So we've already
Buy the
talked about...
cheaper ones, they will bunch up on you, and you will jiggle it around, but you just barely turn this thing, and it's like butter. It's smooth.
What brand polarizers do you use?
Oh gosh, I don't remember. I have to go look.
I recently picked up some B&W. I don't know if
It's a B&W.
is it okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, those seem to be really smooth. I had started with some cheap Best Buy thing when I first got into this several years ago.
Rocket Fish.
Yeah, Rocket Fish. That's what it was. And I mean, at the time, I thought, well, this is fine. And then I started to notice at one point, like everything was slightly out of focus when I was shooting, and it's because the little ring that held the glass in place had come loose. But I didn't know that. I just thought, oh, the glass has gone bad, so I threw it out.
It's like putting cheap tires on a Ferrari. You know, you spend over $2,000 on a G Master lens. You don't want to throw a $15 polarizer on it. You know,
Sure.
basically you get what you pay for. I tried all the Rocket Fish stuff and the cheaper tipping things, and it just didn't. I mean, the only ones I've had luck with are the Zeiss and the B&Ws. I mean, I'm sure there's, you know, a lot of guys use leaf filters and those real high-end expensive filters. I tend to stick to the higher middle of the road stuff because I'm hard on my stuff and I don't want to break a $400 CPL filter.
Well, let's see here. Jake, did you have any other questions on this one or anything?
Not really. I mean, the knowledge that this was a composite was I thought this was a cool image on its own, but being composite is really just stunning.
Yeah, it's fantastic work. The shadow work and placing it in there is just, you know, between the perspectives are already crazy enough, but then to also really plant it to the ground realistically like that. It's phenomenal.
I'm sure people who've never attempted this before will likely cry foul on this sort of thing for being just Photoshop, but it's a completely different skill set and absolutely harder than it seems to do something like this. It's not copy and paste by any means. I have yet to successfully do it. So yeah.
Well, the trick is to not let it look placed. I mean, it's the with the environment, and that's the hard part.
And he did a
There's
great job.
There's a lot of guys that are good at it. I mean, most of the stuff you see from manufacturers are composites.
Yeah. I know James frequently shares some pretty amazing composite work with me, and you've done one or two pretty good ones, haven't you?
Oh man, no, not compared to this. I mean, I was pretty happy with my stuff I did until he told me this was a composite, and I thought, no, I'm just going to delete my portfolio. So. Yeah, this is crazy. There's some really great stuff out there, but yeah, this is, and I kind of wondered when you told me Dale the other day, because you have recently shared I think a Samsung van photo.
Right.
And was that, I don't know that it's the same image.
Same background.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And so I wondered about that. I thought, what are the chances that he would take that vehicle to the exact same place from kind of the same angle? And I wondered.
No, I shot it in a warehouse, and it just didn't look good in the warehouse. We were building those vans here at the shop, and we didn't have a lot of time to get a shot. They parked it there and said, you got about 10 minutes, knock it out. And I grabbed a couple shots, lit it, and then decided I would throw it in that background just for giggles. I finally got a hold of one of the vans and shot it out in the field and composited longhorn cattle into the background for that shot.
Hey, so I see we've got a question here. Brian is asking us on Facebook here what the lens is that you are using. I'm guessing probably your most commonly used lens.
My most commonly used lens is G Master 24-70.
Okay. Yeah, that 24-70 focal length is just, it's so versatile.
It is. I use 16-35 for wide stuff, and that sits in the case more than it does anything. The 24-70 is constantly on the camera. Sure.
Yeah, when I was shooting Canon, I had a 24-70L that I used a lot, and it just I loved the wide end for interior and for, you know, kind of scene setting shots, but then to be able to zoom into 70 and get, you know, you could shoot pretty shallow depth of field for details was just really nice.
Right.
All right. Well, let's move on then. So the next image that we have.
Oh, I didn't know we had more of them.
Well, there's only what's left here now is actually your favorite image. you sent to me that I wanted you to kind of tell us a little bit about here. This image here, I believe this was in Silverton.
Wow.
Yes. Yep. Silverton, Colorado. That's in that's end of May, beginning of June, actually.
And that's snow, right?
That's snow. Yeah, that's 10,000 feet. It was probably about, in Durango, it was probably about 65 degrees, and up there it was 20, blowing wind and snowing like crazy.
Gosh. I feel like we went through Silverton. Jake and I went to a car show out in Telluride a few years ago.
You probably went through Silverton to get the Uray and went up the Uray. Uray.
Yeah, I think so, because there was a rally, like a road rally for part of this car show, and so it was this big loop on the $1 Million Highway.
Yep,
South.
that's the Uray.
Yeah, we went south from Telluride to Uray to Silverton to Durango, and then we headed out of Durango west and came back around up north through the sort of flatlands to the west there, which was a great drive.
Probably up to Dolores and stuff.
You can tell who was driving here because he remembers exactly where we were going. I was sitting in the back with a jerry-rigged DJI Ronin hanging out of the back of his wagon while we tried to film cars on the road rally. And
Right.
I was a lot more fixated on, please don't let this fly out of the back and slam into somebody's Ferrari. So,
That's always the worry when you're hanging out of the back of a car.
yeah.
You're not worried about yourself, not worried about your equipment. You're worried about what that camera bounces and hits.
So, all right. Again, with this image, did you mention already what this was shot for?
It was shot for a bumper company, Bodyguard Bumpers. They're one of my clients, and we were up there doing some new product they had for that Jeep. And we were actually shooting a pickup truck too, along with that. And I was over on the other side, probably about half a mile from there, and we were shooting the truck, and the Jeep owner decided to go tooling around and see what he could find. And he comes back, he goes, "Man, I got this location. I got to show you." And I'm like, I'm going to finish up this truck and we're going to wrap. I'm done for the day. And because we had been in the snow all day and it was cold as all get out. And I was like, I'm pretty much done. He's like, "No, man, you got to see this location." I'm like, "Nah." And the guy I was with, Chris Wyman, that I used to work with, he said, "Just humor him and go over there and see what he's talking about." And he pulls over there and I see that spot and I'm like, "Oh my God, that's the spot of a lifetime." And I said, "Can you get that Jeep out on those rocks?" And he's like, "Yeah, I can get it on those rocks." And he pulled out there and we shot it. And then I said, "Was there any way you can give me a Lion King shot and turn that thing sideways?" And he went to turn it sideways and it started sliding off the rocks, almost into the river. We had to winch it off the rocks with the truck. We had winch lines going into the rocks holding it. And we had winch lines on a truck way off to the right there, pulling the Jeep back out again.
Oh, man.
Pretty comical thing, but the shot was, like I say, it was a shot of a lifetime.
Absolutely.
I've gone back up to Silverton so many times and looked at that spot, and it never looked the same again.
And so how close were you to being in the water for this?
Not far. I mean, I was right on the edge of a rock, so I mean, it was spraying up on me, but I wasn't in the water because it was cold, and it was like, there's no way I'm getting in this water.
And is this pretty wide? It looks like a decently wide shot, or is it actually pretty zoomed in?
It's pretty zoomed in. I was kind of far away from it to get a good spot to it, because if I went over to the rocks on the right, it just didn't look right.
Sure.
So I kept moving farther back, so I kept it wide.
Yeah, there's just a lot of drama with the crashing water there. On the
Right,
front of
and
the rock.
and that's one of the things I wanted. And I wouldn't have gotten that over there because it would have mainly been focused on the Jeep. And I wanted to, I tend to look at some of my images as, a three-dimensional, or, 3 dimensions is mood, lighting, and composition. And, it's like, I got to get the mood of this whole scene and along with the Jeep.
Yeah, and you definitely nailed it on this. It's an incredible photo.
Well, I appreciate that.
All right. Well, I think that kind of covers everything that we wanted to talk with you about tonight.
Okay.
Did you want to share website? Where can people see more of your work?
Mainly, I'm rebuilding my website as we speak. So mainly just Instagram. It's DMarty. It's DMarty78.
And what's the 78 for? I got to ask.
That's the year I graduated from high school. Now I just aged myself.
I was wondering because I know a lot of people use like their birth year, and I thought, well, that only puts him 6 years older than me.
Yeah,
I feel like he might be a little bit older than that. But
yeah, no, that was the year I graduated from high school.
okay.
Decided
I've
to do
been-
my fun job later in life when I wish I would have done it back when I was in my late 20s and early 30s, but I was busy making money.
So you could have fun now, right?
Right. This is more like a retirement job almost.
Well, you're living the dream then. This is exciting stuff.
The old saying is, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life, and it's the God's honest truth. I mean, it's in the freelance world, it's been a struggle at times. You know, I'm not gonna lie, it's hard. I mean, it's a very competitive field, and I would talk anybody into it, and I would talk anybody out of it because it's not for the weak. It's not for the weak. It's it's very stressful at times.
So
I mean,
let's say if you could give photographers that are kind of learning still, which I guess really that is everybody, but green
we all
photographers
learn all
out
the
there,
time.
what advice could you give photographers that are interested in shooting cars, not necessarily for commercial or publication, but just in general? What's some advice that you would share?
Just for people that want to do it for fun, or they want to do it for a living?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's a good question.
If you're going to do it for fun, do it for fun. Have fun with it. Learn from it. Look to others for inspiration. I mean, got a huge job box of
I think we're
inspiration that
losing
I
you.
look at. And you there?
Oh, now I can hear you.
Okay. I said I've got a huge Dropbox file on my Dropbox with inspiration photos. And the funny thing is, it's mainly portrait photography, because a lot of portrait photographers are king of lighting, and I try to mimic some of that in my automotive photography. But it's look to others for inspiration, communicate with others, try to be a nice guy. You can be a very talented individual and be not a nice person, and you won't get work out of it.
Sure. Okay.
And always try, and pass it on. If somebody helps you with something, there's going to be somebody knocking at your door sooner or later going, hey, how do I do this? And, I don't teach, but I'll definitely look at those images and tell them how I would change it or how I would do it. I think that's a good way for people to learn.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, that constructive criticism is invaluable as long as you can set your pride aside. So.
Right, and that's the hardest part with a lot of people. It's like, well, my client liked it. Well, then you're going in the right direction. If your client loved it, then you're going in the right direction. But I would always tell people this is what I would do differently. And I'd say 90% of the people take it and move on and use it. And some people just I want to do it my way. I just wanted to get your thoughts on it.
Sure. Well, Dale, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to meet with us tonight. I'm sorry that we had some technical difficulties, but
that's okay. It's my phone.
Thanks for jumping back in. I mean, it's a circus, but we're all figuring our way through this. So
no, I appreciate it. You guys are doing good things, and it's good. I look forward to watching these things.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that really means a lot to have your support on that. I really appreciate that. We'll go ahead and close this out. So for anybody who maybe is just checking it out, we've been talking with Dale Martin, the godfather of automotive photography. He's an absolute legend. You'll be able to rewatch this later. We'll post it up on our Facebook page. But if you'd like to see more of his work, you can check him out on Instagram. It's dmarty78 is his username. So look him up on there, give him a follow, talk to him. He will talk back. That's one of the best parts about him is he's an invaluable member of the community because he's an active member of the community. So that should wrap up our show for tonight. Thanks again, Dale, for joining us. Thank you, Jake, for co-hosting. You guys have a great night, and everybody online, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next time.
All right. Appreciate it. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.